Hello and welcome back to the ElysianNxt Podcast. I am Chris, the CEO and founder of ElysianNxt, and with me today is Tijs Vandormael. Tijs is co-founder of ElysianNxt and is responsible to build out the SaaS deployment model within tomorrow's solution today. So he's the perfect guest to talk about what are the benefits of going SaaS. Tijs, welcome to the podcast.
Okay, thank you for having me, Chris.
Okay, let's start with the basics. What do we mean with going SaaS?
Okay, so maybe just to explain what do we understand under SaaS. So on our SaaS platform, we are offering fully managed instances of the ElysianNxt application, which means that ElysianNxt is responsible for managing and maintaining the underlying infrastructure, the software, and the data that supports the application. And our clients do not need to manage any of these things themselves. Yeah. We started the SaaS platform back in 2021 when we saw that more and more of our prospects were kind of regarding SaaS as a must-have, not as a nice-to-have anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
When we decided to go SaaS 2 years ago,
Yeah.
what did we need to do? Did we need to change the application itself?
There's a few aspects to consider there. So in the application itself, there were no changes required because the application was built from the very start as a cloud-native application, which means that it's portable and that it abstracts away the underlying infrastructure. And it can run effectively on any cloud environment, any cloud provider, and any cloud model, hybrid, private, public cloud. Then in terms of the infrastructure, we had to define our SaaS architecture. So for that, we worked very closely with AWS to define an architecture that is scalable, secure, and reliable. Yeah, so we got very valuable input there, and we came up with an architecture that is leveraging some of the services that AWS is offering. Think about RDS, which is a data management or database management service, AKS, Kubernetes cluster, managed Kubernetes cluster, and MSK, which is managed Apache Kafka. So for all of these aspects, we use very reliable and well-known services of AWS, which allows us to focus on the management of the application itself. Yeah.
Okay.
Which is very good at.
Okay, so in terms of application, nothing needed to change.
No. Yeah.
Did it have any implication for us as an organization?
It sure had, yeah. So in order to offer a SaaS product, the company had to comply with certain legal and regulatory requirements. For example, GDPR in the EU, and I mean, by obtaining also the ISO 27001 certification, we really demonstrated to our clients that their data is very important. For us. I think another change that we had to do was in terms of staffing, where we had to train existing staff, where we had to hire some additional SaaS engineers and architects to help us staff the SaaS team.
So when you said, okay, 2 years ago we started with building out our software as a service deployment model.
Yeah.
Was there any specific reason why at that time us as an organization decided to go SaaS?
Yeah, so I mean, as I already mentioned, for more and more organizations, SaaS becomes a must-have, where an organization wants to kind of shift part of the responsibility and the management tasks to the vendor. So back in 2021, we started to expand into Europe. And in terms of demand, let's say Europe is slightly further in the curve compared to Asia. So there we started to have more demand. In terms of SaaS.
So it was Europe who triggered
Europe really triggered
that demand.
The demand.
So let's cut down to the basics.
Yeah.
So if they're asking, okay, we only want to go SaaS, why? What's in it for them? What are the advantages?
Several big benefits of using a product in SaaS mode. So first of all, there's lower upfront cost that an organization has to make. So in a typical on-prem solution or deployment, the organization needs to purchase hardware, needs to purchase third-party software licenses, etc. That kind of goes away with using a vendor product in SaaS mode. You pay on a monthly basis an amount to use the service. There's also reduced IT infrastructure required from the bank size because the vendor is handling all the aspects of maintaining the software, including upgrades, security. This will reduce the need for infrastructure and staff from a bank organization point of view. Another big advantage is faster deployment. So with the SaaS model, you can almost instantly create an instance of the ElysianNxt application, where traditionally, you need to provision the hardware from a hardware vendor, install it, deploy it, harden it, etc. Under SaaS, if you want to have an additional test environment, for example, it can almost instantly be provisioned and deprovisioned when no longer required. So very fast provisioning of infrastructure. Of course, it's scalable as well. As an organization grows, you can kind of scale up the SaaS infrastructure as and when required. So you don't need to over provision at the start, let's say, of a 5-year cycle. You can provision as required, without requiring very big changes to the bank's own IT infrastructure. So,
so that also means changing of responsibilities.
That is a very big aspect as well that plays for organizations, because by outsourcing the IT infrastructure and services to ElysianNxt, Elysian becomes responsible for managing and maintaining the software, the hardware, security backups, etc. And this effectively transfers parts of the responsibilities of the bank to Elysian. Think about the data breaches, downtime, SLAs. That would normally be the responsibility of the bank's local IT team. Gets partly transferred to us, to Elysian.
So the bank, they can relax. So it's only the users, they sit in the cockpit. The underlying, maintenance of the engine and the roads, that's done by the ones who have built the engine in the first place.
Indeed, that also plays in terms of support, for example, which is another big advantage of using a SaaS solution. You can get almost real-time support from the vendor, from Elysian in our case, that built the application.
That's an important point, because in the current environment where banks need to do like stress tests, what if scenarios, the performance is key. So who better to guarantee that performance than the ones who built the engine in the first place. You mentioned before that we partner with AWS.
Yes, indeed.
Was there any specific reason why we chose AWS as a partner?
We have been working as an organization with AWS from the very start of the company. So we are very familiar with the cloud platform, the AWS cloud platform. We have the knowledge in-house. We have certified AWS personnel. So that's the reason why we partner with AWS on this. It also has several advantages, let's say, while we are still growing the SaaS business, to stick to a single cloud vendor partner. Think about simplification of the deployment process, cost savings, monitoring, consistency. So these are all benefits that are also trickle down to our customers. Our customers benefit from that as well.
Yeah. So in theory, you could kind of partner with everybody, but because of the specializations, also gives advantages in terms of having specialized engineers who know the environment inside out.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So indeed, the application itself is not bound to any specific cloud vendor or cloud deployment model. It is more from an operational point of view.
Yeah, the efficiency of
yes, that we went from.
How does that work with the bigger banks? I mean, bigger banks have sometimes specific kind of requirements who are kind of tailor-made to them only.
Yeah.
How does that work in a kind of a cloud environment?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I mean, standardizing and streamlining the SaaS operations is very important to ensure efficient and effective delivery of services. But every customer, every client is kind of unique in its own way. So in terms of customization, all of our SaaS application instances are fully isolated from each other. So they use their own dedicated application instance, which is deployed on a separate and dedicated AWS account. But the application itself, same as our on-prem deployments, can be fully customized to the customer, look and feel, configuration, models, and so on. So that's one aspect. Another aspect is integration with the bank's existing IT landscape. So as part of the onboarding process, which is typically the implementation project, we go through an integration phase where we integrate with inbound data sources, for example, through SFTP or other means, where we set up outbound data extracts from the engines back to the customer, and where, as another example of an integration, we integrate, for example, with an identity provider that the bank is already using. For example, Azure AD is typically integrated with as well. So you kind of don't lose any of the customization benefits that you would have on-prem, because we know that every customer is unique. That's it.
That's good to know. That's good to know. Tijs, you mentioned earlier about Europe being at the front runners of the SaaS deployment model. Do you see big differences across the regions?
Yes, there are some differences across the regions, although they are getting smaller and smaller over time. I mean, in Europe, the SaaS adoption is generally high because the technology is very mature, and there's a big trend there towards digital transformation, which has resulted in a very high adoption of SaaS applications. Also, the US are very strong focused on privacy and data protection, which has led to a lot of firms looking at vendors and products that can offer them a very robust platform in terms of security measures and data protection. In APAC or Asia, the adoption is a little bit mixed. You have countries like Japan, South Korea, Singapore, and Australia, where the SaaS adoption is very high. But on the other hand, you have countries like Thailand here and Indonesia, who are now really starting to adopt SaaS as a real candidate, a serious candidate deployment model. We also see that when we look at AWS, for example, the expansion in the region is very high. They're expanding a lot. So we saw Jakarta last year. Earlier this year, a center was opened, or a region was opened in Melbourne, and Bangkok and Auckland will come soon. Yeah, so the investment as well that is being done here in the region is tremendous. Just to give an example, here in Thailand alone, AWS is planning to invest $5 billion over the next 15 years. So yeah, it's
a massive investment. It's
also
also
massive
a
investment.
Sign that the region is getting to a SaaS deployment model.
Yeah.
Tijs, thank you very much for explaining the advantages of going SaaS, what it means in terms of our customers.
Yeah.
Thank you, viewers, for watching this episode of the podcast. And if you want to know more how ElysianNxt can bring your risk management to the cloud and beyond, please visit www.ElysianNxt.com. Thank you.